passion. I have passion to see the people of Southern Cameroon be able to live on their expectations. We have lived in a world that is full of corruption and full of destabilizations. And when it comes terms of Africa, the narrative changes and they do not want to stand for the truth. They do not want to speak the law apply equitably to the various African countries. And it has been very disturbing to see the world working against not on the terms they're supposed to, but they deviated from the truth. And that affects many Africans throughout the rest of the world, you know. It is quite painful and it is quite devastating. And I think it is imperative that African has to stand up, you know, for obligations. And we have to stand up and speak the truth. Because by speaking the truth, we bring the truth to the international, to the people, not just the international community. Because, of course, the international community, we want them to be aware of the fact that they are deviating from the original truth. And they always stand when they become concerned, the international community. But when the indigenous people speak, it's not of their. And we use every means to suppress the fundamental basic principles in which they stood for in their own various nations. And they think that the truth is just basically for them, their own developed nations. And that the African world countries doesn't. And they use every opportunity for the leaders that happen to be an obstructionist. They do not feel the pain of the suffering of his own people, but they believe that they can do whatever it takes. And that is why we, all of us, it is an obligation that we must stand up, speak the truth, and let the world understand that we are aware of this fact. Can you imagine that in southern Cameroon, within the past 4 years, at least 40,000 people have been killed. And within that 40,000 within the past 4 years, it doesn't make any significant meanings to the international community. They have their common saying or their common language they speak. We are deeply concerned. They are deeply concerned. And what are you deeply concerned about? When you can't take actions and you know the problems and you know that you're the architects of the problems, but they do not want to speak about the problems. They do not want to bring it to the highest level because they block every aspect in the manner that they can do and prevent the justice. But yet, could you imagine that it happens to them? Of course, they will immediately call emergency sessions to debate about the crisis. But when it comes to Southern Cameroon questions, it is none of their business. Yet, the fundamental truth is simple. The people of Southern Cameroon should have been decolonized. They should have been decolonized if the law was applied equitably. If the law was applied equitably, the people should have been decolonized because there are great distinctions in which they do not want to accept. And when you hear nations like the United States say they do support the territorial integrity of Cameroon, one wondering whether do they think first? And when you listen to the British government, they say, oh, they respect the territorial integrity of Cameroon. But one obvious question is, which Cameroon are they speaking about? Of course, if the United Nations did say a decolonization, that all territories that were under the colonial masters be decolonized, they didn't say exception should be applied. It says all nations should be decolonized. Southern Cameroon fall under the same categories and should also be decolonized per the United Nations order. Unfortunately, that did not happen. The British administrative authority at the time, that is in the 50s, 60s, ignored this fundamental fact, but their prerogative interest was for their own self-glorifications rather than stand for the truth. Imagine that the people of Southern Cameroon, as part of the colonial territory, has been living under the British administrative authority. Why would the British government expect the people of Southern Cameroon to live with a French territory where the policy and the rule of law is not equitable or is not the same as the Southern Cameroon? The people of Southern Cameroon believe in the rule of law, and that is the fundamental value that the people of Southern Cameroon share. Whereas in the Francophone, they believe in a civil law system, in a civil law system. In a civil law system, they always consider every individual as guilty prior to the law, and this has been a fundamental question that the people of Southern Cameroon is unwilling to accept, and they've been fighting for now. And yet, the international community deliberately, intentionally ignored this fact. Okay, if the people should have been decolonized, we would not have arrived in this point where at least 40,000 citizens of Southern Cameroon brutally murdered by the regime. Okay, let's look at the United Nations facts. We are asking that Article 1514, Article 1608, and 76b, those are the key essential documents that was enacted by the United Nations, that it should be fully respected and resolved. And if that, then that becomes a question: who is La Republique du Cameroun? Of course, although the United Nations to some degree has asked these questions and forced La Republique, instead La Republique continued the massacre of citizens of Southern Cameroon with the false assumption that everything is under control and that they can do whatever it takes to take supremacy over the citizens of Southern Cameroon to be able to govern themselves. And you find the military murdering citizens, murdering women, murdering children, destabilize. And unfortunately, they believe that we are not aware of these clear facts. But you can take, for example, the incidents in Kumba, you all know, where the divisional officer brutally set soldiers that it was debated at the senior divisional officer's home. They debated the planning sessions, how to massacre children, innocent children. And the purpose was to carry out, when the action is taken, then they immediately indicate that it was done by the Ambazonian defense system. So, because they are supporting school resumptions. Of course, people of Southern Cameroon are not just ignorance. They are aware of facts. They don't carry on such an action. But the senior division is using that opportunity so that they can portray to international community lies that they have formulated, and so that they can take continuous steps, have control over the citizens of Southern Cameroon. I mean, the people of Southern Cameroon are smart enough. There is one thing that, why should the people of Southern Cameroon be governed by a foreign nation? The people have been, for the past, able to govern themselves. They do this. They're able to transfer power. La Republique, since its creations, has never, in a democratic institution, provide that credentials. They have never transferred power. I mean, you can imagine that former President Amadou Ahidjo, that was in power for 25 years, and he handed over to the current brutal dictator for 37 years. They have never, since its creation, La Republique, transferred power. And yet, the international community, they think the people of Southern Cameroon should be under the umbrella of a foreign dominance. And that is why we are here to say, no, let's look at the facts. We cannot live it under the form of governance of La Republique of Cameroon. Of course, now they're trying to organize what is so-called the House of Chiefs. That is not the key problems. Those are part of the problems that we want to govern ourselves. Why was it, first of all, closed in the first place? Because they wanted dominance. They wanted dominance to control the people of southern Cameroon. So we want to be able to manage our territory at our terms and how we want them to be governed. We don't believe in a francophonie autocracy that would dictate on people of southern Cameroon. I mean, we are educated enough. We know the value that we want. We know how to govern. We don't expect La Republique to come and teach us how we can govern ourselves. Of course, let them govern themselves. The reason why La Republique is so glued onto the people of southern Cameroon is because of France. France's interest in the raw material that are found in southern Cameroon. That is their prerogative, to glue onto and get all the materials that is found in southern Cameroon. Ignore the fundamental. Of course, if France was interested in Africa as a whole, they would have been saying, oh no, let's hold on. You cannot kill 40,000 people within the trickle of 40 years, within the trickle of 4 years, and yet France ignored, because the La Republique is fighting for their interests, not for the interests of the people of southern Cameroon. Fellow brothers and sisters, we cannot sit quietly and ignore this fact. Well, let's stand up and say no to La Republique, no to France, and steadfast. Do you know why France do everything that it does? Of course, you can look at, you know, all the various strategic areas that can be opposition to France are extremely controlled by France, and install French colonial citizens to make sure that they guard all those areas. Let's look at OAU, Organization of African Unity. Do you know what? It's headed by a francophone. It's headed by a Chadian, which is a francophone, and control every aspect of any discussion at the United Nations that pertain to the people of southern Cameroon. And so it blocks every aspect and makes sure that, of course, you can listen to the former representative to the United Nations, which is African, and she was deliberately forced by France so that she be dismissed. And they claim that it was the end of her term of office. That is an absurd. Of course, you look at the sub-Saharan Africans. The United Nations representative is a francophone. You know Francois Lefort is a francophone. So they glue every aspect. So France is very smart. France makes sure that all those aspects are controlled by francophone, its colonial territory, and so that it gives no voice for the people of southern Cameroon to speak. And they know that you can see, like the Ghanaian president, he was an outspoken against the French. And so France knew that for them to be able to succeed, every strategic position that has the potential to question their legitimacy in Africa must be headed by a francophone. And that's why the United Nations representative at the OAU is headed by francophone, Francois Lefort. And he prevents every aspect of discussion and do not provide key facts to be debated at the United Nations. He blocks every aspect. And then you go to the OAU, which is also headed by a Chadian, which is of course a francophone. Then you can understand the point why I am bringing these key facts, so that let us understand that the people of southern Cameroon has got enough of this French dominance in control of the aspect of the life of people of Africa. And so we have to step up and say no to this, a continued process of control by the French over the people of Africa. And so southern Cameroon is a particular clear example. Of course, we have to step up our momentum, our potential, and discard all this behavior. Of course, it takes a collective effort for all of us. You all saw the so-called, the organized House of Chiefs. House of Chiefs. The key point, of course, look, some of our citizens all of our citizens are all languishing in neighboring country La Republique du Cameroon. If we revisit the 1961 Accord, or a tentative respect that no citizen of La Republique should be arrested and held in Southern Cameroon, neither should the citizen of Southern Cameroon be held in neighboring country La Republique du Cameroon. So if that were respected, then La Republique has no legal authority to arrest our citizens and languishing them in La Republique neighboring country jail. Of course, we have about, close to 1,000 of them languishing in Condé prison, and some in Douala. And yet, so why do we have to live with La Republique in the questions? We don't have no legal obligations to live with La Republique. We can govern ourselves and make the nations accessible to us. So one key factors that I believe that we should look into is the CFA. The CFA is what glued La Republique to the people of Southern Cameroon. So we can discard that currency, the CFA, and abolish it out of Southern Cameroon. We institute Ambazonian currency. Ambazonian currency is essential that we can start eliminating La Republique. Let's take a typical example. The Nigerians were being glued by the British government, and because the currency that was legal tender in Nigeria was the British pound. So the Nigerians were so smart enough, they knew this. So the key indicator that they cannot survive if they have to live on the currency of the British pound. So the first thing Nigeria did was to discard the currency and introduce the Naira. And when the Naira was introduced, gradually steps, then British knew that they are off-handed, and so they have the right to pack their luggage out of Nigeria. So if Ambazonia institute an Ambazonian currency, is the key indicator that we no longer rely on CFA, which is a La Republique legal tender, and shouldn't be a legal tender in Southern Cameroon. Of course, many people argue that we have no control. We must have 100% control of our territory. No, we don't have to have 100%. Citizens that are fiscally in Southern Cameroon can start develop the practice of the new introduced Ambazonian currency, whatever it is the people decide to utilize as the medium of exchange between the people of Southern Cameroon, called the legal tender. We don't have to use the Nigerian Naira because it's not the legal tender of Southern Cameroon. We can use the dollar because it's not the legal tender of Southern Cameroon. So Ambazonian currency is a medium of exchange that the people can utilize as a solution to these problems. So therefore, introduce Ambazonian currency gradually. There is a key factor that we can do: collateral security. Collateral security, we can create let's say $100,000 as a backup for the collateral security for Ambazonian currency, so that we start phasing out the CFA out of Southern Cameroon and gradually introduce Ambazonian currency as a legal tender medium of exchange between goods and services. So let's take, for example, if the divisional officer's wife step to the market and present a CFA, we say no, we no longer accept that as a medium of exchange. And so that is the key indicator. Once that CFA is no longer acceptable by the people of Southern Cameroon, that is a key indicator. And they have to fight for the Ambazonian currency as a medium of exchange. And that will give them the key fact that the people of Southern Cameroon mean business. So Ambazonian currency is the key factor that we must institute it. We must institute it. But I'm going to continue to debate on this line of argument and present a scenario, a case that Ambazonia must free from La Republique du Cameroon dominance and control. So do not stay, when I'm going to elaborate more further on this topic, Ambazonian currency. And I want to thank all of you that are watching, and have a wonderful day.